I'm going to keep this straightforward because I know a lot of you are standing at the crossroads of, do I need a big SSD for my home server, or am I just chasing a hype label? The answer isn't a one-liner, and I'm not going to throw you a list of specs without context. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. In the next few minutes, I'll walk through what really matters, the everyday value, the hidden trade-offs, and whether the Gigastone NAS certified 4TB SSD pair actually fits the way you use your PC, your games, or your NAS. First off, let's talk about the hesitation most buyers feel. A 4TB SSD in a 2.5-inch SATA form factor isn't cheap, and the market is littered with drives that promise enterprise-grade endurance but end up being overkill for a typical home setup. The risk you're managing is twofold. You could overpay for capacity you'll never fully use, or you could buy a drive that can't handle the constant read-write cycles of a 24/7 home server. That's why it helps to break down the actual use cases. If you've ever tried to stream a 4K movie from a traditional hard drive while another family member is downloading a large game update, you know the frustration of a bottleneck. A SATA SSD that can sustain around 530 megabytes per second in sequential reads and writes, like the Gigastone model, cuts that latency dramatically. The SLC caching layer is essentially a fast buffer that handles those sudden spikes when you're pulling multiple streams or launching a game directly from the NAS. In practice, I've seen the first few seconds of a game load drop from a minute on a HDD to under 15 seconds on a similar SATA SSD with caching. That's not a marketing gimmick. It's a real improvement you'll notice every time you click play. Now, why buy a pair? The 2-pack makes sense if you're planning a RAID 1 mirror for data protection or a RAID 0 stripe for extra speed. In a home media server, RAID 1 is popular because it gives you an instant copy of your entire library. If one drive fails, the other still holds everything. The 3-year warranty that Gigastone offers also adds peace of mind here. You're not stuck with a dead drive after a year of constant use. For gamers who keep a massive library of AAA titles, RAID 0 can give you that extra edge in load times, though you sacrifice redundancy. The choice really depends on whether your priority is safety or raw speed. Who should consider this kit? If you run a small home office and need a reliable place to host virtual machines, a 4TB SSD per slot gives you the headroom to keep multiple VMs running without worrying about hitting the storage ceiling. Creators who edit 4K footage occasionally, not daily, will appreciate the faster cache when moving clips around, without the need for a full NVMe workstation drive. Families that stream multiple high-definition videos, keep a large game library, and want a quiet, low-heat storage solution will find the SATA form factor fits nicely in most mid-tower cases without the power draw of a high-end NVMe drive. On the flip side, skip it if you're on a tight budget and your primary need is simple backup storage. A traditional 4TB HDD can cost a fraction of the price and will still hold your files, albeit slower. If you run a workstation that does heavy video transcoding, constant 4K rendering, or large scientific datasets, the TLC flash used in this SSD, even with SLC caching, may wear out faster than an enterprise-grade drive designed for that intensity. Also, if your motherboard only has a handful of SATA ports and you already have a couple of drives for OS and applications, adding 2 more could force you into a crowded bay and potentially impact airflow. In those situations, a single larger SSD or an NVMe drive might be a cleaner solution. Let's talk about practical strengths. The biggest win here is the combination of capacity and reliability. Most SSDs in the 4TB range are either M.2 NVMe drives that need a compatible slot or are marketed for data centers. Gigastone's SATA version works with virtually any desktop or NAS that supports 2.5-inch drives, which means you can drop it into a Synology or QNAP unit without fiddling with adapters. The advanced technology claim translates into a firmware that does wear leveling tailored for mixed read-write workloads typical of a home server. In real life, that means you're less likely to see a sudden slowdown after a few months of heavy use. The weaknesses are just as important to acknowledge. SATA 3 caps at about 600 megabytes per second, so you'll never hit the speeds you see on modern PCIe 4.0 NVMe drives. If you're building a new high-performance rig and you have an M.2 slot available, you might feel the SATA bottleneck when copying large game files or moving massive photo libraries. Also, TLC flash, while perfectly fine for everyday use, does have a lower write endurance than SLC or MLC used in